Today we will now start with another chapter known as rectification of errors. So as you know, whenever we do recording of transactions and posting of accounts and then preparing the trial balance, there are possibilities that there could be errors. So these errors could be at any of the stages, and we can have different kinds of errors. Let us try to understand what are the different kinds of errors and what stage these errors occur and how these errors can be rectified depending on at what stage they have been detected. You know that unintentional omission or commission of amounts and accounts in the process of rendering the transactions are commonly known as errors. That means there could be omission of recording of entries or commission of recording of entries. So omission means altogether not recording the entry at all, either partially or in full. Commission means recording the entries wrongly, either in the amount or on the credit or debit side. For example, a debit entry could be recorded as a credit entry, or a credit entry could be recorded as a debit entry. So such errors are called errors of commission, and these errors can occur at different stages in the process of accounting. As you know, it can be at the stage of journalization, that is the first stage of recording of transactions. It can be at the stage of ledger posting, or it can be at the stage of totaling, that is balancing of the accounts, and thereafter it could be at the stage of carrying forward the balances to the trial balance and trying to balance the trial balance. So at any of these stages we can have errors. So the trial balance will give you an idea as to whether the errors are there or not. So the arithmetical accuracy of the trial balance means that there are no errors, but it however does not mean that there are absolutely no errors, because certain errors cannot be detected through the system of trial balance. If there are compensating errors or if there are errors of principle, then these will not affect the assets, liabilities or income and expenses. Still the trial balance will tally. So we will have to find out as to how these errors can be rectified, how they can be detected first and then thereafter rectified. So we will try to understand the different types of errors, how they occur. We will take some examples as you go along, and later on we will try to understand as to how to rectify different kinds of errors which are detected in the course of the finalization of the accounts. So as I said, there are different stages at which errors can be detected. So the errors can be detected at the stage of recording of transactions in the journal, that is the first primary stage called journalization of entries. It can be detected, it can occur at the stage of posting of the entries in the ledger. It can occur at the stage of balancing of ledger accounts, that means trying to total both sides of the ledger account and then taking the difference on one side so as to balance both the accounts. So mistakes can occur at this stage also, or they can occur at the time of preparation of the trial balance. That means jotting down the balances of various accounts into a summary sheet known as the trial balances. So before we go to the step of trying to understand the rectification of such errors, let us try to understand in detail as to what are the kinds of errors and how can we distinguish between one type of error and another type of error. So basically there are two types of errors. One is called an error of principle, the other is called an error of clerical mistake, or also known as clerical errors. So clerical errors further are classified into three categories. They can be errors of omission, errors of commission and compensating errors. So we will try to understand the meaning of each of them with certain examples. Let us start with the errors of principle. As you know, whenever there is a contravention of the accounting principles, it is known as an error of principle. For example, instead of taking purchase of an asset as an entry relating to asset side, we take it as an expenditure. That means if you have purchased, let us say, furniture, it is debited to the purchases account instead of debiting it to the furniture account. So here the principle involved is, since you are spending the money on purchase of an asset which is likely to yield enduring benefits, it should be treated as an asset and not as an item of expenditure. So the principle has been violated. Such errors are known as errors of principle. Or for example, let us say there are wages paid for the installation of machinery. So this is also a capital expenditure, so you should go to the machinery account. Instead of that, you may debit wages account instead of debiting the machinery account. So this is also an error of principle. In case of error of principle, whenever such errors are committed, they cannot be detected by balancing the trial balance, because there is no change in the amount and there is no wrong posting on the wrong side of the balance sheet, or debit has not been posted as credit or credit has not been posted as debit. But only thing is, instead of one account, another account has either been debited or credited. So it doesn't show up in the trial balance. These have to be detected by different methods and thereafter rectified. Then coming to the clerical errors, as I said, there are three types of clerical errors. One is known as errors of omission, second is errors of commission, third is compensating errors. An error of omission is one where a transaction is omitted either partially or in full. If it is omitted partially, it is known as an error of partial omission. If it is omitted fully, it is known as an error of complete omission. So it can be either partial or complete. Similarly, in the case of commission, the error is because of posting of an amount on the wrong side. That means a correct amount is posted on the wrong side, or correct side is taken but the wrong amount is posted. That means wrong amount posted on the correct side, or it could be the third way, that is the wrong amount posted on the wrong side. So all these three possibilities are there. For example, instead of posting 100 rupees to wages account, you may post it as 1000 rupees. That is posting a wrong amount on the correct side. So the wages account is debited, but you are debiting with a wrong amount. The second case is correct amount posting but debited to the wrong, but on the wrong side. That means the wages account, the debit, instead of debiting the wages account, you credit 100 rupees to the wages account. So this is a mistake of crediting the correct amount but on the wrong side. And third is crediting the wrong amount on the wrong side. That is, instead of posting 100 rupees, debiting 100 rupees to the wages account, you credit 1000 rupees to the wages account. Here both the side is different. Instead of debiting, you are crediting, and secondly, instead of posting it as 100 rupees, you are posting it as 1000 rupees. So errors of commission can occur in all these ways, and these also need to be rectified depending on at what stage they have happened. And lastly, we have compensating errors. The compensating errors are those errors which get compensated. That means one error committed by you, it compensates another error which has already been committed. So in such cases, they will not get reflected in the trial balance sheet. They have to be detected separately by going through each of the entries recorded in the transactions. So let us take some examples of different kinds of errors which we considered. So let us start with errors of omission. One example here is goods purchased from A. Let us say this is the transaction not recorded in purchases book. That means you don't record it in the purchases book, but you take it to the A's account. Then what happens? That means you have recorded only half the transaction. There is a case of partial omission. So it is called a partial error of omission. And in the second case, you don't record the entire transaction. That means you neither record it in the purchases book nor take it to the A's account. So this is a case of complete omission. So such an error is called an error of total omission. So when it is a total omission, such errors do not affect the trial balance sheet. That means if you have forgotten to take it both on the right, on the credit side as well as the debit side, it is not going to affect the trial balance. But if it is taken only on one side and not taken on the other side, that is a partial omission, then the trial balance will not tally, in which case it becomes easier to detect such errors. So normally partial omission errors are easy to detect because they can be detected by not tallying of the trial balance sheet, whereas errors of total omission are not usually detected by tallying the trial balance. They have to be detected by some other means and thereafter corrected. Then coming to errors of commission, some examples can be like this. One is posting of current account but on the wrong side. That means you have taken the amount correctly, but instead of debiting you have credited it, or instead of crediting you have debited it. And second is posting of wrong amount but on the correct side. Instead of crediting a particular amount, you have credited some other amount. That means the side taken is correct, whereas the amount is wrong. Or third example is posting of a wrong amount but on the wrong side. That means instead of crediting an account with certain sum, you are debiting the same account with some other sum. That means both the mistakes are there. That means the side also has changed, but also the amount. And there could be errors in the totaling of the subsidiary books. For example, there is a purchase book. You have recorded, let us say, 10 transactions in the purchase book, and while totaling it, you commit a mistake. So that wrong total then is taken into the purchases account. So that will also result in error. And there could be error in balancing the ledger account. As you know, when we post entries in the ledger on the credit and debit side respectively pertaining to that account, at the end of a particular period, maybe on a daily basis or even weekly or fortnightly basis, when we carry forward the balance to another accounting period, we have to balance both the accounts by totaling both the sides and putting the difference on the side which has got a lower balance. So at that time we may commit mistake in balancing. That means the totals of either side could be wrong, in which case we are carrying a wrong balance to the next accounting period. So such an error is called error in balancing of a ledger account. So all these are known as errors of commission. Now let us try to understand what steps can be taken to locate these errors. So as you know, even if there is a small difference in the trial balance, it must be located and rectified. A small balance does not necessarily mean the mistakes is very small, because it could be a result of several big mistakes and showing it as a small mistake. So therefore it is absolutely necessary that all errors are rectified, and for that we need to go through the accounts. Therefore in the case of accounting, normally a procedure is followed such that a person who is doing the original work will not be doing the supervisory work. That means somebody else has to go through the accounts properly, so as to check each and every transaction so that errors can be located. For locating the errors, normally the following steps are taken. Check the totals of both the columns of trial balances. The first step is to start with the trial balance, checking the totals of both the columns. And secondly, check whether all the balances have been jotted in the trial balance. Once that is done, then you go through each account and find out whether all the balances appearing in those accounts have been carried forward correctly to the trial balance. Whether the correct amount is taken in the trial balance or whether it is taken to the correct side of the trial balances. If it is a debit balance, it has to be taken to the debit side of the trial balance. If it is a credit balance, it has to be taken to the credit side of the trial balance. So that has to be found out. And then once this is done, you have to find the exact balance in the trial balance, whether both of them tally, and if not, what is the exact difference. This will give an indication of the errors committed. Once there is a mistake in the two totals, there is a difference in the two totals, you will have to start identifying. Thereafter what you have to do is, we have to go through the ledger accounts one by one and try to find out whether the balancing has been done properly or not. So in many cases it is likely that some of the mistakes could be found out at the time of balancing of ledger accounts. And thereafter, if any mistakes still remain, then we have to go through the subsidiary day books like purchases book, sales book. We have to go through the totals of all these books and find out whether the proper totals have been done and whether these totals have been carried forward to the respective ledgers. Then if the amounts are very, very large, then it makes sense to compare it with the previous year's figures. If previous year's figures are compared, then you know that the mistake would have been in a particular account. For example, if you find that the salaries of last year, the total is, let us say, 5 lakhs, and this year it comes to 40 lakhs. That means there is obviously a mistake in the salary account. So something must have been posted wrongly or taken wrongly. So you can go through only salary account and try to locate the mistake. This way mistakes can be easily located and thereafter they can be rectified. And there are certain steps you need to follow while rectifying the errors. First of these is, error should not be corrected by overwriting. Normally these days, in the age of computerization, the entry itself is completely changed and we post a new entry, but whenever manually the ledgers are written, normally it is a practice not to overwrite, so that it is easy to identify the correct amounts. So it is cut and then separately written, the exact amount is separately written. Overwriting is normally avoided. So the wrong entry is normally crossed out and the correct entry is made. If the errors are located after some time, the correction should be made by passing suitable rectification entries. That means instead of trying to rectify the old entry, we pass rectification entries. We allow the original entry to continue as it is, and that incorrect entry has to be rectified by passing of certain other entries. And as I have said earlier, an error can be detected at any of the following stages. One is before preparation of the trial balance, second is after the trial balance, but before the final accounts are drawn. That means before profit and loss and balance sheet are drawn, and lastly after final accounts, that is in the next accounting period. So the mistakes cannot be detected. So we finalize the entire financial statements and go to the next account year, and in the next accounting period we locate these errors, and then also we need to rectify these errors. So let us try to understand how these errors, which are detected at different stages, are going to be rectified. So let us start with the first type of error, that is errors detected before preparation of the trial balance. And in this case there could be again two types of errors: errors which affect one side of an account or which affect more than one account, in such a way that it is not possible to pass a complete rectification entry. So such errors are called one-sided errors. They are corrected by making rectification statement in the appropriate side of the concerned account. That means it does not affect both the sides, only either credit is affected or debit is affected. So there is no need to pass a rectification entry. It is not possible to pass a rectification entry. Example is, let us say sales book is undercast by 200 rupees. Undercast means the total has been taken lower by 200 rupees. Let us say there are 10 transactions in a sales book, the total should have come to 20,000. You have taken it as 19,800. That means there is a mistake committed in totaling it. So what you have done, once the sales book is ready, you have posted that total, wrong total, to the sales account. That means sales account has been credited by 19,800, whereas respective accounts of the customers who have been given credit sales have been debited by those amounts. Those amounts are correct. The mistake is only in the total. So debit side is okay, credit side is less by 200 rupees. So you cannot pass a full rectification entry because you have to increase the credit side by 200 rupees. So this is done by posting it in the sales book by 200 rupees. So in this case what you have to do is, you have to show it as undercasting of sales book by 200 rupees and credit that 200 rupees on the credit side of the book. So such entries cannot be passed by means of a full journal entry. That means there is no debit in this case, and in some other cases there need not be any credit also. There could be only mistake on the debit side, in which case you have to only correct the debit side of the transaction. And there could be other errors where it is possible to pass a journal entry. That means errors affect more than one account, such that complete journal entries are possible for the rectification. That means if you have to credit some account and debit some other account, because both the accounts are showing wrong balances. There are mistakes in both the accounts. Let us take the example of purchase of machinery entered in the purchases book. Here what should have been done? Purchase of machinery is not to be entered in the purchase book because it relates to purchase of fixed assets. So machinery account should have been debited. For correcting the entry, we need to pass the entry as under. That is, machinery account should be debited with 2,000 rupees and purchase account should be credited. Why purchase account is credited? Because it has already been debited wrongly. So that needs to be rectified. So the correct entry would be machinery account debit 2000, purchase account credit 2000 rupees. Similarly, sale of machinery, old machinery entered in sales book. Sales book will be only in respect of those transactions in which the entity is dealing in. So, machinery should not go to the sales book, it should have gone to the machinery account only. Machinery account should have been credited. Since you have credited sales account, you have to reverse that entry by debiting sales account and then crediting machinery account. So, the correct entry to be passed is sales account debit 2000 and to machinery account 2000. So, in this case what has happened is two accounts are affected. So, both the accounts need to be changed. For that you can pass a full journal entry. So, we have found out that the errors could be affecting only one side, called one sided error. The errors could be affecting both sides, in which case a full journal entry is possible. So, this is the stage when trial balance stage has not been finished. That means errors have been detected during the preparation of the trial balances. What happens after the trial balance, but before final accounts you detect the errors, then how to rectify these errors? So, what we do here is, in the case of trial balance does not agree, we should make all efforts to ensure that the errors are located and the balance is agreed. Sometimes, however, trial balance is artificially made to agree by opening a suspense account and putting the difference in the trial balance to the account. Let us say trial balance debit side is excess by 500 rupees, that is credit side is lower by 500 rupees. So, instead of trying to locate and spending time, we can balance it artificially by introducing another entry on the credit side, that is called credit suspense account by 500 rupees, so that both the sides tally. And if the credit side is more, then the debit side can be made to tally with the credit side by introducing a debit entry in the suspense account. So, this way sometimes when the errors are not very significant, we use the system of suspense account to balance both the accounts and then go on to the preparation of the final accounts. And thereafter, whatever money has been kept in the suspense account, either debit or credit, needs to be found out and rectification entry passed. So, what then happens is, once the error is located, then we have to reverse that entry which has been put in the suspense account. For example, let us say sales book is undercast by 100 rupees. That means we have got a lesser amount posted in the sales account, that is a credit balance is less by 100 account. So, that money has been kept in the suspense account. So, suspense account there is a credit balance of 100 rupees. So, now we have found out the mistake that it pertains to sales account. Therefore, in order to reverse the suspense account, what entry we have to pass is debit suspense account by 100 rupees and credit sales account. So, suspense account becomes 0. So, ultimately all items put in the suspense account need to be reversed by finding out where the mistake lies. It could be the result of one or more mistakes also, in which case all those accounts need to be debited or credited and the entry reversed in the suspense account. And the third stage where errors can be rectified is the stage when the final accounts are also prepared and errors were not rectified or detected at this stage, they were detected only in the next accounting period. So, that time also we need to rectify all such entries. So, here what we do is, since they were not detected before the finalization of the final accounts, the amount would have been either credited or debited to suspense account. So, the suspense account will be showing these amounts. Suspense account balances get carried forward to the next account year, and in the next year when these errors are located, we have to pass an entry, and this should be passed through a special account styled as prior period items or profit and loss adjustment account. For example, let us say your wages account has been debited less last year. So, you have kept that amount in the suspense account. There is a debit balance of, let us say 500 rupees in the suspense account, and you found out that it pertains to wages account only in the next accounting period. In the next accounting period, you have to reverse it. This can be done only by crediting suspense account and debiting wages account. But this wages amount of 500 does not pertain to the current accounting period, because it pertains to the previous accounting period. So, in order to distinguish the expenditure pertaining to prior periods, what we do is we create another account known as prior period items. They are all debited or credited to this account, so as to distinguish this year's profit with the total profit which you may be getting. On account of this debit coming into this accounting year, profit will get reduced. So, in order to show the correct profit, we have to show the prior period item separately. So, what are prior period items? Prior period items are material income or expenses which arise in the current period as a result of errors or omission in the preparation of the financial statement of one or more prior periods. So, these mistakes could have occurred in the previous year or previous years. It could be 2 years earlier also, and they are detected during the current accounting period. So, such errors and omissions, they may relate either to income or expenses, are treated as prior period items. And as we have seen in the accounting standards, prior period items should be separately disclosed in the current statement of profit and loss, together with the nature and amount, in a manner that their impact on the current profit or loss can be perceived. What is the basic objective? Objective here is the users of the financial statement must know as to what is the actual profit for the current year. And because we have passed certain entries pertaining to prior periods, we need to take away the effect of that and show the current year's profit separately, and thereafter arrive at the total profit after taking into account all the items of prior periods, whether they are income or expenditure. So, the users of the financial statement will be able to distinguish between actual current year profits with the net book profits shown in the books of accounts of the entity. Now, let us try to take some exercise as to how to rectify such entries. Let us start with one-sided errors. That is, these errors affect only one side of the entry. It could be a debit side or it could be a credit side. So, let us take this example. Salary paid rupees 890 posted as 980. That means instead of posting it as 890, it has been posted as 980. Similarly, purchase register has been undercast by rupees 500. That means there is a totaling mistake in the purchase book or the purchase register. And the third one is amount paid to XYZ posted to his credit as rupees 5000. What is the meaning here? Amount has been paid to XYZ and it is posted to his credit. So, what should have been done? It should have been debited to his account. Instead of that, we have posted to his credit side. That means instead of debiting, we have credited. So, it has to be rectified. And the last one is amount received from ABC posted to his debit as 800 rupees. Here, the amount has been received. It should have gone to the credit of the ABC's account, but it has been debited. So, let us see how these errors, one-sided error, can be rectified. So, what we have to do here is, first of all, before we rectify an entry, first step is always to visualize as to what should have been the correct entry. And secondly, find out what is the actual entry passed. Once these are before you, it will be possible for you to find out what should be the rectification entry. For example, let us take the first example. Salary should have been 890. So, the correct entry should have been debit salary account 890 and credit cash account 890. So, what has actually happened? Entry actually passed is debit salary account 980 and credit cash account 980. So, from the two entries on the board, you can see that salary account has been debited by an amount in excess of 90 rupees. That means there is an extra 90 rupees debit. So, this needs to be corrected. This can be corrected only by reducing the debit balance in the salary account by 90 rupees. That means we have to credit the salary account. So, the correct rectification entry will be debit cash account 90 rupees and credit salary account 90 rupees. So, if you combine the entry actually passed and the rectification entry, it will lead to the correct entry. That means the sum of the second and third entries on your screen must equal to the entries given in the first line. That is the correct entry. That is how you have to correct the entries whenever an example is given. Let us take the second example. There the purchase account undercast by a certain amount. So, correct entry should have been debit purchase account by that amount. Let us say it is XXX, and you have to credit the respective accounts with the same amount. So, what is the actual entry passed? Since there is an undercasting of the entire total by 500 rupees, you have debited purchase account with XXX minus 500 rupees. That means it is short by 500 rupees, but you have credited respective accounts with XXX. That means there is no change in the credit side. Credit side has been posted correctly. So, what should be the rectification entry? Rectification entry should now affect only the debit side. So, we have to pass the rectification entry as debit purchase account rupees 500. Now, if we add up second and third entries, it will lead to the first entry, that is the correct entry. Take the third error, that is correct entry should have been debit XYZ. XYZ should have been, account should have been debited and cash account should have been credited with 5000 rupees. But what we have done, we have actually reversed that. We have credited XYZ account and debited cash account. So, now in order to ensure that XYZ's account is debited with 5000, we have to debit it with 10,000, because we have to negate the effect of credit of 5000 and thereafter it should show a debit balance of 5000. So, with twice the amount, XYZ account has to be debited and cash account has to be credited with twice the amount, that is 10,000. So, now if you add up entry 2 and 3, it will lead you to entry 1. And take the fourth example. There what we have done, correct entry should have been debit cash account 800 and credit ABC account. Instead of that, what entry we have passed? We have actually debited ABC's account with 800 rupees and credited cash account with 800 rupees. So, the rectification entry should be that ABC's account should show a credit balance of 800. So, in order to go from 800 debit to 800 credit, we have to credit his account with 1600, that is twice the amount. So, the correct entry would be debit cash account 1600 and credit ABC account with 1600. So, as you see again, the total of entry 2 and 3 must equal entry number 1. This is how you have to rectify the entries. So, to summarize once again, what you have to do is, first of all, whenever you have to pass rectification entries, you visualize what should have been the correct entry. You write it down and then also write down what entry has actually been passed. So, depending on these two entries, you can easily make out logically as to what should be the entry to be passed for rectification of that particular error. Now, we will take up some two-sided errors, how to rectify these errors. So, let us take the following examples. One is wages paid for installation of machinery debited to wages account rupees 1000. Second example is purchase of furniture debited to purchases account rupees 50,000. Let us start with the first one. So, as I said earlier, whenever you want to rectify an entry, first thing is to visualize what should have been the correct entry that should have been passed, and second is find out what is the actual entry passed, and based on these two you can find out what should be the rectification entry that needs to be passed. In the first case, the first example, the correct entry should have been, we must have debited the machinery account and credited cash account, because machinery is purchased with cash. So, correct entry is debit machinery account with 1000 and credit cash account. And what is the entry actually passed? The debit has been given to the wages account. So, the entry is debit wages account 1000 and credit cash account 1000. So, based on these two, now you know as to which account has to be debited and which account has to be credited. So, in order to come back to the correct entry, we have to debit machinery account and credit wages account. So, whatever debit we have created in wages will get nullified with the credit and it will be debit machinery account. So, the correct rectification entry is debit machinery account and credit wages account. So, if you look at it again on the board, sum of second and third will result in the first entry. That means, we will come back to the correct entry. Now, take the second example. What should have been the correct entry? The amount should have been debited to furniture account and cash account should have been credited, but the entry actually passed is it was debited to purchases account. So, we debited purchases account with 50,000 and credited cash account with 50,000. So, what should be the rectification entry? By looking at the first and second lines, we will find that we have to debit furniture account with 50,000, and whatever debit has been raised in the purchases account has to be nullified by crediting purchases account. So, the correct entry is debit furniture account and credit purchases account. So, the sum of lines 2 and 3 will be equal to line 1. That is how you have to rectify the different entries. Now, we will take some exercises relating to those entries which need to be rectified after the final statements have been completed. That means, the final statements have been done by putting the balance in the suspense account. The balance could be either in the debit side or in the credit side, depending on which side was in excess or shortage. So, in such cases, we have to go back and try to find out which account has to be debited or credited, so as to reverse the entry lying in the suspense account. Let us take these two examples. One is the salary paid as 890 posted as 980, and similarly purchase register under cost by 500 rupees. This now we are doing in the next accounting period. That means, the amount is lying in the suspense account. So, we need to remember that we have to reverse the entry in the suspense account. So, first visualize what should have been the correct entry had it been detected at that point of time. That we would have debited salary account with 890 and credited cash account with 890 rupees. What was the actual entry passed? We had passed an entry of salary account for 980. It was a mistake only on one side. Cash account was credited correctly with 890, and therefore, we had a difference in the trial balance which was not located, and we had put that amount in the suspense account. So, we had credited suspense account with 90 rupees, and this mistake was detected in the next accounting period. So, now we have to reduce that balance in the suspense account. That means, suspense account has to be closed. So, since there is a credit balance in the suspense account, we need to debit suspense account. So, the correct rectification entry will be debit suspense account 90 rupees and credit salary account 90 rupees. This will be treated and kept separately as a prepaid, as a prior period item, so that this can be disclosed separately in the balance sheet of the current period. Similarly, in the second case, purchases account undercast by a certain amount. So, what was the correct entry? Correct entry should have been purchases account with the correct amount XXX and credit respective accounts with XXX. But what entry we had actually passed? We had passed the purchases account debit with an amount of 500 rupees less. That was amount was XXX minus 500 rupees, but the respective accounts were credited correctly with XXX. Therefore, there was a imbalance in the credit and debit balance in the trial balance, and that amount we had kept in suspense account. So, we had debited suspense account. So, now in the next accounting period, we have found out that the mistake was on account of undercasting of the purchase book. So, suspense account entry has to be reversed. Since we had kept the amount in debit balance in suspense account, we have to reverse it by crediting suspense account. So, the correct entry will be debit purchase account 500 rupees and credit suspense account 500 rupees. And this purchase again relates to the prior accounting period. So, it has to be shown separately as a prior period item in the financial statement of the current accounting period. With this, we come to the end of this topic for rectification of errors. To summarize once again, what we can say is errors occur at different stages and they need to be rectified, and for that you have to understand the different types of errors, how they are committed and what is the process of rectification. As we have discussed, errors can be of errors of principle or clerical errors. Errors of principle are those errors where an accounting principle has been violated. Instead of debiting or crediting a particular account, we have debited or credited another account because we have not understood the accounting principle properly. Therefore, it needs to be rectified. In the case of clerical errors, they could be on account of errors of omission or on account of errors of commission or compensating errors. An error of omission is one where an entry is altogether omitted or partially omitted. error of commission is one where we have made a mistake in either posting a wrong amount on the correct side, or a correct amount on the wrong side, or a wrong amount on the wrong side. And a compensating error is one where we have made more than one mistake, and one error has compensated the other error. Though the trial balance is balanced because of compensating errors, we need to locate even such errors, and for that we have to follow certain steps and thereafter try to rectify the errors. Then in the next session we will be taking up another important subject called reconciliation of the bank accounts.